Also a member of the local committee. I'm very happy to see all of you enjoying the conference, and also I'm very excited to see that a lot of meaningful conversations are happening around this conference. So I'm very happy. As you know, today we have a very special event, special program, an emergent experience. So that's why we all wear casual clothing compared to the yesterday and the day before. But before going there, before you delve into the real context of Korea, I would like to invite you to come to this roundtable talk and think about some issues that are very important, especially in the context of Korean Peninsula. I would like to ask you to think about the issues related to peace, war, and unity, or perhaps unification in the context of Korea, how they are interconnected and intertwined with the issues of environmental justice and other Anthropocene-related issues. So first of all, I would like to introduce our wonderful three panelists sitting here next to me. First, let me introduce Dr. Kunju Christine Pae. Kunju Christine Pae is a scholar of Christian social ethics. She's currently an associate professor of religion and queer studies in the chair of the Department of Religion in Denison University, Granville, Ohio, USA. She's been teaching there since 2008, and her courses include women's spiritual activism, ethics of peace and war, and ethics of sex and love. Her research is quite interdisciplinary, ranging from critical Christian studies and Asian American studies to women of color feminist theories. She's born and raised in Korea and moved to the US and never came back.
I came back sometimes.
She's here, but she got her MPhil from Yale University, Master of Philosophy and Doctor of Philosophy in Christian Social Ethics from Union Theological Seminary in the city of New York. Among many, her recent works include Soldering and Militarized Prostitution, subtitle is Making a Christian Feminist Ethic of Peace Through the Lens of Proletarianized Sexuality, in the book titled The Faith, Class, and Labor, edited by Jin Young Choi and York Rieger. Okay. We will have more time to hear who she is and what she does after this my initial introduction. And now let me introduce the Professor Dr. Andres Hassan Clever. He's from, by the way, are you identify yourself as a practical theologian?
Not really.
I mean, okay, you can answer later. Think about that question. But Hassan Clever is definitely not. That's how he identified himself. He's a political scientist. So when I first sent an email to him, I was like, oh good, but what can I do there? But I found that he had something in his CV that was his master's degree in Roman Catholic theology. But he has PhD from political science from University of Tübingen, Germany. The title of his PhD dissertation was very interesting to me, The Power of Morality in International Relations, subtitle Analyzing Military Interventions of the Western States in Somalia, Rwanda, and Bosnia. And since then, he conducted multiple participatory research projects in Africa and worked on issues such as regime analysis, international trust dynamics, and the impact of religious traditions on political conflicts. Among his most important publications are Theories of International Regimes, published with Cambridge University, and Does Religion Make a Difference? Theoretical Approaches to the Impact of Faith on Political Conflict, which he contributed to Millennium as the Journal of International Studies. Andres currently serves as the director of the Institute of Political Science and is elected member of the Senate of the University of Tübingen. Now, let me introduce Ayoung Moon. my former boss, by the way. Ayang is a very well-known peace educator and peace activist in Korea, and also very well-known globally. She has made significant contributions to introducing and popularizing the concept and practice of peace education in Korea. In 2012, she founded the organization named Peace Momo, a non-profit organization that focuses on providing educational programs for school teachers and educators in various settings. Through Peace Momo, she has worked to incorporate the language of peace activism into the public education curriculum and promote non-hierarchical and dialogical learning environments. Ayang is also a critical thinker, particularly addressing the ways in which education in Korea is impacted by the national division and militarism prevalent in this country. She's currently a PhD candidate in Peace Education Studies in the UN-mandated University for Peace in Costa Rica. I also serves as a council member of the International Peace Bureau and provides advisory services to various institutions involved in peace and education, including the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Unification, and Ministry of Gender Equality and Family of the Republic of Korea. So please welcome these three wonderful panelists. The way that we organize this roundtable talk is this. I prepared 3 questions to all panelists, and for each question, each panelist will be given the same amount of time to answer. And for having an efficient and focused conversation, the questions were given earlier so that they can come with some ideas they would like to share. So here's the first question. Since they all come from different areas, and we're practical theologians, we know everything about practical theology, but not much about other parts of the world. So although I gave the introduction of them, but I asked this question one more time. Can you tell us more about yourself? And let me explain a little bit more. Please tell us where you're coming from, not regionally. I'm not asking where you're coming from regionally, but this is a question that asking what kind of the world you're coming from. What's the context, and what's the people you work with? What was your major project, especially in the works of peace and justice and war and unity and so forth? So I'd like to give the mic to Andres first.
Okay.
Introduce your work.
Thank you very much. I think we are all now under quite heavy time pressure, so I will try to be brief on this questions, if you permit. We heard a lot of neoliberalism over the last days of this conference, and I'm more an old...
Oh, the mic.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. So we heard a lot of neoliberalism over the last couple of days on this conference, and I have to confess that I'm more one of the old liberals, which might make the debate which will follow on our roundtable a little bit more lively. I'm originally worked in the field of international relations, did some research on international institutions, which many found to be strongly biased towards the global north. And then I turned to the issue of religion and conflict, and did also some counseling for our foreign ministry on these issues. And I'm also trying to teach my students to try to better understand these dynamics in order to help peoples on the ground to support peace initiatives. So that's broadly my position for today. Thank you very much for having me. It's great that I'm here in this very, very interesting place and discuss also my ideas with you, which I found very helpful and fruitful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And next, Ayang, can you go?
Good morning. Can you hear me? As Doctor introduced me as his former boss, I don't like the hierarchical relationship, but he calls me boss here, so it was.
Never get out of that.
Yeah, I used to work with Jeonchul when he came back to Korea. So he joined my organization as a research. What was your title that time?
Title? Oh, a dissertation?
No. When you were at Pismo.
Head of the research.
Right.
In the Trans Education Institute.
For peace.
For peace.
So we used to work together, and he asked me my context. I was born in Korea and raised here, and my hometown is called Chuncheon. The name is Chuncheon. It's a little 2 hours by car from Seoul. And I was a kid afraid of the war, so I lived my childhood with anxiety, and I have 2 sisters, so younger sisters. So I trained them to escape for any kind of emergency. So I had a regular training with my sisters. At the time, they were like 4 years old, 5 years old. They remember that I asked them to be a part of the emergency exit training or something. And I think that really heavily influenced on me, and it really drove me to deeply think about peace and conflict, and conflict transformation and so on. And also, it's really weird to be in this place and space with like all the theologians here, because I'm not really holy. It's not the right word. Sorry.
You're in the right place.
Very secular point of view, I'm going to share my background and my thought today. But I was born into a pastor's family, so my father is a pastor. And he started a church in Chuncheon with my mom. And I was obligated to go to the worship service on every Sunday. So I have very conflicting minds about this religion and Christianity and everything. So this is where I come from, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much. And now, could you please stand?
Hi, my name is Kunju Christine Pei. I'm known as Christine Pei in the United States. And then in Korea, people call me Pei Kunju. I've been to Korea so many times. So I left Korea back in 1998. I'm an Episcopal priest, and my canonical residence is Newark, New Jersey, the United States. I was the first Korean woman national who was ordained in the U.S. Episcopal Church. And trained as a Christian social ethicist, I have focused my research on anti-military feminist theology and spiritual activism. And race, class, gender, and sexuality have been my critical tools in analyzing U.S. military bases in the Asia-Pacific region and understanding faith-based popular movements against militarism. So in terms of my identity, 2 days before this conference, I submitted my monograph titled Trans-Pacific Imagination of Theology, Ethics, and Spiritual Activism. In that book, I identified myself as a citizen of the Pacific Ocean and transnational Korean women. I used to call myself Korean guest worker or Korean migrant worker in the United States. But after my kids were born and I strategically identified myself as first generation Korean American, then I realized that I have lived in the United States and Korea and also in between. So I feel comfortable being in between, like between Korea and the United States, and then Pacific Ocean is it's including all the oceans, land, and islands. Having said that, I'm strictly trained as a transnational feminist ethicist, but I'm also a practical theologian. I have a few reasons why I can be considered a practical theologian. I actually joined this organization back in 2014. I backed my good friend, Dr. Boyoung Lee, to write a recommendation for me to join this group because I wanted to go to South Africa. So we did, but 2015, my first baby was born, so I couldn't attend the conference, but I keep paying my dues. So I guess I'm very impressed. She considered me as a full member. And my good friend Courtney Goto in the United States, actually, I encouraged her to quote me as a practical theologian, emerging practical theologian in the United States. So I guess I'm also between ethics and practical theology. And as I just finished my monograph recently, I learned that I'm doing a lot of theology too. I'm doing a lot of social ethics, but a lot of theology at the same time.
And you all heard that, right? Quote her as a practical theologian in your work, please. All right, thank you very much for explaining more about who you are and where you come from. And this is the second question, and I think this is the key question for this roundtable talk. So the question is this: in your context, or based on your experience and observations, have you ever found any connections between environmental issues and peace/conflict issues? How do you think environmental issues connect with peace-conflict issues? Can you tell us about that, and also with some kind of concrete examples you have? Okay, so in this time, you go. Yes, Ian, please go first. Please show her PowerPoint, please.
That's mine. That's my Iron Moons slide.
Ian, please.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, please guess where it is. Gimpo. Thank you. But it's not. Sorry. Okay, thank you. There, oh, yes, I heard the name of the city. There was a hint in my introduction. It's Chuncheon. Yeah. So, how is it? Is it beautiful? Oh, yeah. Chuncheon is very famous for the lakes and rivers and the mountains. It's a small city. I love my hometown. But actually, this picture is not real. It's the blueprint of the Chuncheon city. So the real picture doesn't work. Yeah, won't work. Yeah, this is the real picture. What do you see? Yeah, devastated area. Why is it so? This place is a land which was returned by U.S. military. It used to be the U.S. military base in Chuncheon. The name is Camp Page. So when I was young, when I was elementary school student, I used to hear that some professors' daughters and some rich people's daughters are going into Camp Page to learn English. So I was envious of them. Wow, they have a chance to learn English with English, speakers. Wow. So at that time, there was a kind of hierarchy in the classroom. Somebody is close to the US soldiers and somebody is not. So the Camp Page is really permeated in the daily lives of Chuncheon people. But it was returned to Korean government in 2007. And then from 2007, as you all know, after the military base is left, what we would see from the abandoned land, it was contamination. So purification project was started in 2007, and then it lasted forever. So next picture. This is a corroded oil drum found in Camp Page last year. And next picture, please. This is a contaminated water, contaminated leaks in the land. Next picture, please. And this picture was taken by me. I visited here in 2021, and I witnessed this scene. And under the plastic cover, it's a corroded oil drums leaking contaminated waste oils. And I closely looked into it. Next, please. I was thinking that it was like a blood of the land. So I was looking into it, I was thinking, why we should have such image in front of me? Why the people of Chuncheon City, they paid tax, and the tax was paid to the Korean government to get this land back to Chuncheon citizens. So the people of Chuncheon, they didn't get returned this land, they paid to regain this land. And this land was completely contaminated, devastated. We couldn't do anything with it until now. So I was thinking that conflict in Korea, it is still ongoing, as all of you know, and you will go to DMZ today, right? Some of you. It's not like the past, something happened before. It is happening now. So I was thinking about my hometown, this abandoned land, and this is not only in Korea, in Chuncheon. Next slide, please. I'd like to show you some picture. On the left side, it's before 2016, and it's after 2016. That's the U.S. military bases in Korea. And then President Obama, he said people to Asia, you might remember, and they want to rebalance their power. So they want to refocus on Asia, and then they wanted to make the military bases into big parts. And Camp Humphreys is the biggest U.S. military base in Asia. So this is how the military bases are located. Next picture, please. High pressure, right? And this is just a glimpse of how many U.S. military bases in the world. Next, please. And I wanted to show you the numbers of the U.S. military troops in the world and the military bases. The first rank is Japan and Germany and South Korea. Number of the bases and number of the troops. Next, please. So I think this shows the result of the division that we are living with. It's not only divided Korea, but everywhere actually. It does not go.
Can you show the next slide?
So I wanted to just introduce just one more story, and then I will wrap up. This is the picture of the Northwest Youth Association back in 1950s and 60s. Have you ever heard about it? Regarding the division issue of Korea, I think the responsibility of the Christianity is really huge. That's what I observe. Northwest Youth Association, they were started from the Christians from Northwest area of Korean Peninsula before the division. And once the Korean War started, they became a very important partner of the U.S. government, and they monopolized the war, so how do you call it? Emergency kits, like AIDS material from the U.S. So they had the power to distribute. So they didn't even give the AIDS to other denominations of the Christianity. So there are like many records. Next picture, please. They started to be a very important political groups in Korea, and they became very strong consultation members of Park Chung-hee, the dictator, in 1960 to 70. And they are the original source of the far-right extremist group nowadays in South Korea. So I was thinking that whenever I think of division of South Korea or the Korean Peninsula, I asked to myself, I was born into Christian family and what I learned in the church, it didn't really actually tell me anything about this. So I got shocked because, next picture please. In 1948, there was Jeju April 3rd massacre, and approximately 25,000 to 30,000 people were massacred. They were killed by the group of soldiers and a group of young men, and the major perpetrator was the Northwest Youth Association. They killed these civilians under the name of God and under the name of peace and under the name of unification. So I was thinking that how should we revisit this ongoing history of division, which was guided by such a belief, a strong belief of Christianity. So this is the one that I wanted to share with you, and I want to discuss further with you later on. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Your explanation includes how militarism affects this land and nature, and also how religion is related to the reality of the Korean Peninsula, the division itself. So thank you for that. Okay. Now let me invite Christine to continue her story, her observations.
Thank you, Ariane. So she ended her presentation with April 3rd massacre in Jeju, and actually my presentation focuses on faith-based popular resistance to the construction of naval base in Jeju. Can I move this or? So imagine yourself in a small village called Gangjang on Jeju Island, off the southern coast of the Korean Peninsula, where the Pacific Ocean hugs every corner of rocky cliffs and sandy beaches. Every morning at 6:30, you wake up to the blue ocean and walk to the crossroad in front of the Jeju Naval Base. Sometimes you walk through warm and humid wind, misty fog, chilly airs, wet snows and storms, and although most days are partially cloudy with mild temperatures. About 3 yards from the main gate to the naval base, you join Lady Han's small group of people who prostrate for peace 100 times. This ritual is adapted from the Buddhist 108 vows. The Buddhist practice of 108 vows symbolizes taking the suffering of all sentient beings and repenting past, present, and future wrongdoings. After 100 peace vows, you can join the group walking to the community kitchen by the three-way intersection near the base. The junction used to be seen from the pedestrian way before the base was constructed. Now the gray metal fence separates the community kitchen from pedestrian path and driveways. So it is difficult for a visitor to find the community kitchen because there is no road to get there. You should slide over the fence and go through the grass. After community breakfast, you can take a walk on Route 7 of Jeju Ole, Jeju's famous hiking trails along the Gangjang Stream and the ocean. Route 7 boasts a mystical and beautiful scenery where freshwater streams join the sea. Unfortunately, the naval base blocks the trail a few meters away from this scenery. So what the picture is showing where Gangjang Stream is meeting the ocean. So far back you can see the ocean, and then the stream is a river. To complete the Jeju Ole 7, Route 7, you should detour around the naval base and finish the course at the Gangjang port. At 11 a.m., you can join the Catholic Mass across the stream from the naval base. Although the base pushed the tent church a bit further south from its original location. As of June 2023, a total of 5,806 masses were celebrated. At noon, we may join the human chain in front of the neighbor base, chanting peace, marching around the base, singing, dancing, and shouting out for peace. No base, no more airport. The community kitchen is again open to visitors and activists who participate in making human chains or want to learn about peace activism in Jeju. You actually click my slide because I made a kind of... So in 2016, I published an essay, Faith-Based Popular Resistance to the Naval Base in Gangjeong of Jeju, Transforming Militarized U.S.-Korea Relations for Peace and Justice. The essay was the result of my 3-year research of faith-based social activism against the construction of Jeju Naval Base. The base was completed in 2016. In the summer of 2022, I visited the village again. My last memories about Gangjeong were construction trucks and workers, long fences around the construction site, escalating protests against the base, and creating social movements. Gangjeong has changed a lot. I could barely recognize roads as a neighbor base took over my familiar spaces. To my surprise, however, 100 vows for peace on outdoor Catholic Mass and human chains for peace are still practiced even 6 years after the construction of the naval base. So what sustains faith-based or soul-searching peace activism, even if the war economy always seems to win over people's resistance to war and yearning for peace? In this presentation, I wrestle with this question, such as how to live responsibly in a globalized world and care for God's creation when the neoliberal war economy, climate change, and racist violence undermine all living beings' right to life. The Pacific is our ocean. Where shall we turn for consumers of our surplus? Geography answers the question. China is our natural customer. The Philippines gives us a base at the door of all the East. U.S. Senator of Indiana, Albert Beveridge, said on January 9, 1900, when he spoke for the economic and political interests of the United States in the Senate. Beveridge made a speech filled with American imperialism in support of President William McKinley's annexation of the Philippines after taking over the Hawaiian Islands, Guam, and Puerto Rico. On occasion, McKinley claimed that God had revealed a special plan for the United States to Christianize and civilize Filipinos. The Pacific Ocean seemingly separates North America from Asia. However, for the past 2 centuries, the Pacific Ocean has been the arena for the U.S. to materialize its imperial desire by constructing bases, occupying Pacific islands, and opening markets. The rim of the Pacific is the most recent example of U.S. imperial desire over the Pacific. RIMPAC is the world's largest international maritime exercise that meets under U.S. leadership every other year. From June 29 to August 4, 2022, 26 nations, 38 surface ships, 3 submarines, 9 national land forces, more than 30 unmanned systems, approximately 170 aircrafts, and over 25,000 personnel participated in the 28th edition of the WIMPAC around the Hawaiian Islands and Southern California, San Diego. South Korean armed forces sent the largest contingent to the WIMPAC, including 3 warships, 1 submarine, 3 warplanes, and more than 1,000 soldiers. The 3 warships were deployed from the Jeju Naval Base to Hawaii. Among 26 participating countries of WIMPAC, North Atlantic Treaty Organization members such as France, Germany, the United Kingdom, and the Netherlands are not considered Pacific countries countries, except that they had colonies in the region. Australia, India, New Zealand, and Tonga are the military partners of the US to expand its power to the Indian Ocean, Oceania, and the South Pacific. They also participated. Even Israel, far from the Pacific Ocean, participated in REPAC 2022. REPAC should be cancelled. Seong-in Che, a Kamjong activist, emphasized several times during my conversation with her. I first met Che in the summer of 2011, a few months before the Korean government detonated Gurumbi rocks to set the foundation for the naval base. Che has been active in publishing online Kamjong news in Korean and in English, and she has been busy networking with the anti-war organization across the globe. Che accentuated the importance of global solidarity for peace when the conflict between the Korean government and Kamjong villagers surrounding the naval base broke the major news outlets in 2011. That year, many global supporters visited Kamjong village. I met Americans, French people, Okinawans, New Zealanders, and many others in the village, where people dare to dream of a demilitarized world and protect Earth from military capitalism. Like in 2011, Che reiterated Jeju's geopolitical importance, which necessitated international solidarity work for peace. According to Che, the Jeju naval base was built to prevent China from expanding its power to East and Southeast Asia. And who wants to lead China? The South Korean government constructed the naval base in service of US military strategies in the Pacific. So Che saw REPAC 2022 as the example to conceal the US hegemony in the Asia Pacific. Like many other Pacific islands that offer ports and bases for the US, Jeju has geopolitical significance in the East Pacific. Its naval base makes armed forces easily deployable toward China. If the United States still depends on a collection of land bases around the globe, the Jeju naval base gives the U.S. additional military leverage. So Che was not the only person, and many people in the Pacific created a network called the Pacific Peace Network, consisting of members from countries and islands across the Pacific, including Guam, Jeju, South Korea, Okinawa, Japan, Philippines, Northern Mariana Islands, New Zealand, Australia, Hawaii, and the US. And in the petition sent to the legislators of 26 participating countries of REPAC 2022, the Pacific Peace Network called for the cancellation of the naval war practice for generally 3 reasons. First, REPAC contributes to the destruction of the ecology and aggravation of the climate crisis in the Pacific. Second, the massive expenditure of funds on war making is incompatible with human security when humanity, especially Pacific populations, suffers from the lack of food, water, and other life-sustaining elements. And third, the increased presence of NATO in the Pacific only escalates the conflict between China and the United States. We often forget the war is still going on in the Pacific Ocean while we think about the war in Ukraine right now.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. This one? Yes, it works. Now we turn to Andreas Hassan-Klemmer. I expect to hear something very from a different angle about peace and the relationship between the environment and war and unity. So please go on.
Yeah, I think I will provide a different perspective, but it is not a perspective that is in any sense better or higher or something else, but it's just a different perspective on a very complex topic, and I share most of the views of my panelists here, and I'm also quite critical towards US foreign policy, so to speak, but I probably approach this problem from a different position, if you will, and as we can, I think, debate hopefully also in our roundtable. What I want to do in my contribution are 2 points, and I will get started with the first point, and this is about the relationship between climate change and armed conflict. And for the second part, I want to look into features of religious communities which make them more or less prone to support violence, if you will. But this is for the second round of our roundtable. So let's get started with the first part. This is also not working. Could you please click? Okay, so let's get started with this. So we are all aware that climate change is ongoing, and that climate change is. Just try to start also my computer, because otherwise I have problems to see what's going on. My eyes are not that good anymore. Getting older. So we all know what climate change is about, and we know also that climate change results in extreme weather events which have long-term effects, like the melting of ice and also the rise of sea levels, many storms, disasters, hurricanes going on. And so in that regard, climate change is really a disaster which is in the making, if you will. And this puts many societies on social stress, and they are facing death and destruction as a consequence of climate change, and they also does not work. So could you please click? I don't know what the problem is. Okay, and click another one. I say click and then you go further, okay? So, and click again. Okay, so now we are here at that stage of my presentation, and I was talking about the social stress which results from climate change, and this social stress can be measured in terms of loss of income and livelihoods, in increasing numbers of displaced people, and strong migration flows all over the world. And the conventional wisdom has it, now click please, the conventional wisdom has it, could you please click? There should be, yes, now, here we are. The conventional wisdom has it that then there should be some, arrow going from social stress to armed conflict. And this arrow is not as easy as many thought it might be. And now click, please. There's missing something. I have here now, could you please click again? And click? No. It's an old presentation, I'm afraid, so sorry for that. So you should see now a graph. And this graph is composed of 2 lines, the blue line and the orange line. And the blue line stands for the number of natural disasters per year, if you will. And the orange line stands for armed conflicts per year. And I see on my screen these two lines are, developing in opposite directions. And this means that the connection between natural disasters, the occurrence of natural disasters, which stands for climate change, and the occurrence or onset of armed conflict is not very straightforward, but is mediated by a number of factors that we in the peace and conflict studies have found to be very relevant for civil war onset. And this is mostly factors that are related to high-risk situations and so-called weak coping strategies. And these high-risk situations are situations of strong horizontal inequalities, of economic crisis, and bad governance. And we found that, given these risk factors, climate change operates as some sort of a risk multiplier. Which means there is no direct relation between climate change and armed conflict, but this relationship is very strongly modified by the coping capacities of countries and societies and the risk factors that are already on the ground, like the exclusion and discrimination of larger parts of the population, or economic crisis ongoing, or bad governance, which results then in a decrease of trust in the public efforts, which then results in some sort of social and political mobilization, which might lead to armed conflict. So in the end, this is a very complicated relationship, but what is very clear is that armed conflict as such has a very negative impact on the climate vulnerabilities of societies. So there is no direct link between climate change and armed conflict, but armed conflict is clearly linked to the capacities of countries to deal with climate challenges. And therefore it is of highest importance from my point of view to do more for conflict management, conflict prevention, and also peace building after violent conflicts in order to strengthen the capacities of communities on the ground to really cope with the social stress which is resulting from climate change. And this then would lead to specific questions also towards religious communities. And with regard to religious communities, we can clearly see that sometimes these religious communities are helpful for dealing with these negative externalities of climate change, and sometimes they are, highly problematic in this setting. And therefore, and this I reserve for my second round, it is interesting and important to ask under which conditions are religious communities found to be helpful in this very complex setting, and under which conditions these communities are contributing to the problem, are part of the problem which we are clearly understand as in need of a common effort for a solution. And that would be my first part so far. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and I'm sorry for all the emphasis that we have related to the paper. So thank you very much. I think what we have heard from Ayang and Kunju was more like how militarism affects the place we're living, but the Andres also highlights how the climate change, what's happening in nature affects what we're living in, and also how that causes, or you said not really directly but indirectly related to the conflicts we're living. So thank you very much. And let me go to the third question. So this question is this: what kind of effort do you like to emphasize that we should make in this? We heard the different contexts and different stories, but related to that, what kind of things that we should take a look and do for that? So for this question, who wants to go first? That's Christine, right? Yes. Would you like to go first?
Yeah, would you please just put my slide, PowerPoint slides? And then move. Yes, right there. Click. One more. Oh, no, go back. Yeah, right there. Stay there. So the picture you're seeing is Catholic Mass, a Catholic Eucharist said and performed on the street in Gangjang. And whenever I encounter this Catholic Eucharist, I meditate on Sean Copland's, the U.S. Black feminist Catholic theologian Sean Copland's Eucharistic solidarity that radically embraces and loves others beyond our community's immediate concerns. So more than 10 years later, in the presence of a neighbor base like the Tower of Babylon in Gangjang, I re-encountered the Eucharistic solidarity with an image of a God of interstices. So emphasizing the indispensability of a transnational analysis in feminist theology, Kwakpyelan presents an image of God, a God of interstices that arises from the mobilization of transnational networks in solidarity with victims of violence, war, oppression, and now climate change. So God of interstices is not a new image reflected from the contemporary context of the US Trans-Pacific Empire. Instead, this God has existed since the creation of the world and reverberated again and again when people of faith embody transnational network for peace and justice. The Pacific Peace Network's anti-war solidarity movement resonates with the God of the interstices. So Kwakpyelan's God of the interstices is also developed from Rita Nakashima Brock's concept of interstitial integrity. The Rita Nakashima Brock's theological concept of interstitial integrity emphasizes actively remembering, re-remembering, and reclaiming the historical memories of Asian Americans. Brock understands histories and memories as essential resources to comprehend how one's understanding of the self is formed. Brock's interstitial integrity honors Asian American women's centuries-long courage and activism for justice, equity, and peace domestically and internationally, recalling more than their historically conflicting nationalities attached to their ethnic identities. So living in the Pacific, trans-Pacific space, these Kwakpyelan's and Rita Nakashima Brock's theological imagination are very crucial for me to think about trans-Pacific solidarity. So trans-Pacific solidarity for me is crucial to experience and even materialize the divine interstitiality. Activists in the Pacific are keenly aware that decolonization and demilitarization in the region depend on solidarity and support from outside the region, especially support from citizens in the United States, China, Japan, Canada, South Korea, and other Pacific Rim countries. It is difficult to build bridges between the Pacific region and the above countries, for example, due to the government surveillance on peace activism in countries like China and also now South Korea too. Nonetheless, trans-Pacific solidarity is a long-term solution to save the region from militarization and deterioration of environmental crisis. So I would like to share my short conversation with Sung Choi again. So what makes you continue to live in Gangjeong and carry out peace activism even 6 years after the erection of the naval base? When I answered this question to Sung Choi, her answer was simple. Because our struggle for peace has not ended until the entire world is free from war and military violence. Now Gangjeong is a site of peace and becomes a school for peace. So peace activism arising from Gangjeong does not depend on the naval base. Whether the naval base exists or not, Pacific peace activism would continue until the Pacific Ocean truly lives in its meaning, pacifism. So when you get a chance to visit Gangjeong, hopefully, when I just heard about this conference, I wanted to organize a trip to Gangjeong, but you have to fly there. When you get a chance to visit Gangjeong, stand firmly where the Gangjeong Strait is happily united with the Pacific Ocean. Right there, you become a citizen of no nation, but a citizen of the Pacific Ocean. Without splitting yourself into different groups of interest, we maintain our integrity, being accountable to all living beings of the Pacific Ocean. I'm gonna go through the next slides. And I wasn't sure whether to share this image, but then I would like to challenge a bit further. So shock doctrine, shock and no operation, and scorched earth are all US military languages. And then all of these tactics have been actively used in any wars the United States participated in. And then now as you see, these war languages, whenever war is waged, this war is first waged against non-human natural beings because environment must be destroyed first. So when we think about, when we criticize Anthropocene, and also when we think about war, and when we think about climate emergency, we must work to demilitarize the world, because the whole like U.S. not only U.S. military alone, but our militarized ideas or our militarized imagination, even shock and awe, is based on Christian apocalyptic vision. All of these militarized visions and actions contributed to deteriorating our environment. So I'll stop here.
Thank you very much. Andres, can you go next?
Thank you. Could you again try to run my presentation? Yes, click please. Click. Yes, okay, let's stop here. I will try again to make a very complex story quite short. So I get started with what Scott Appleby calls the ambivalence of the sacred. And he wrote that at a given moment, any two religious actors, each possessed of unimpeachable devotion and integrity, might reach diametrically opposed conclusions about the will of God and the path to follow. Violent as well as non-violent acts fall readily within the range. And I leave it to you, theologian, to discuss these propositions, if you will. For me, as a social scientist, it is interesting to, find features that might explain this ambivalence. Is there something special with the religious communities which are supporting violence, and by contrast, there is something special with religious communities which are not supporting violence? And short trigger warning, so what will follow now is still a somewhat Eurocentric perspective. So I will discuss now 4 features of religious communities that I found to be quite interesting in this regard. But this is, features which they are jumping into my eyes, if you will, because I'm somewhat a European scholar who found these features, to be immediately reasonable and insightful. But let's get started. The first feature that I found is that we can distinguish between communities that have a certain religious literacy versus those who have not that religious literacy. And I'm following Daniel Moore in her understanding that religious literature refers to a shared understanding of the complexity and ambiguity of religious tradition, which makes nascent interpretations of tradition necessary. Or would you please give the next slide? Next click. Okay, so this is what I have read so far, and which is summarizing the ideas of what religious literacy is about. And now click, please. Religious illiteracy, by contrast, and this is a term which was coined by Scott Appleby, facilitates the selective use of religious sources for political purposes. And this very logic builds about, lack of knowledge about the complexities of certain traditions, which then can be used in a very one-sided way, which helps to build clear-cut distinctions between one community and the other, and then can translate it in processes of dehumanization. And this theoretical claim, as it is so far, nicely translates into empirical findings. So we have now quite substantial empirical findings which show that religious illiteracy really increases the willingness of community members to use force. So Christine Fair, for instance, was looking into responses in Pakistan, and she identified with her surveys that people who are less knowledgeable about basic teachings of the Quran are those who are more likely to be mobilized to support militant Islamist groups. And by contrast, religious literacy is found time and again to be associated with less support for violent non-events, less support for violent movements. And here, a famous studies conducted by the United Nations Development Program of Violent Extremism in Africa found that those people who have a better education, better religious educations, are those who are less inclined to join armed groups, if you will. The next factor, click please, and click, I'm sorry, I'm not trained in this. And now the next slide, please. Okay, and the next factor is about religious awareness and religious fundamentalism. And here, religious awareness is characterized as some form of understanding that the sacred is categorically distinct from the profane world, which requires then soteriological bridge building, as it is also called by my theologian friends. And this clique then is opposed to religious fundamentalism, where holy scriptures are unequivocally thought to contain the sacred and can serve as a blueprint for organizing social life, as many fundamentalists are also thinking. And here again we have a set of quite strong findings, and now click and click, strong findings that religious fundamentalism de facto is increasing the willingness of community members to use force. And by contrast, click, yes, by contrast, religious awareness then is associated with less support for violent movement. Another factor, yes, thank you, is the distinction between communities characterized by a religious public versus communities characterized by religious encapsulation. And the religious public dimension refers to an open intellectual exchange among religious authorities to discuss their interpretation of religious sources. And click, by contrast, the opposite then is religious encapsulation, which is understood as withdrawal of faith communities from their broader discursive environment. And here, interpretations are no longer subjected to critical scrutiny. And again, the empirical findings, click, are supporting these theoretical propositions. And the final slide in this regard, click please, is about the distinction between communities which have a certain religious autonomy versus those who are co-opted by political regimes. And religious autonomy here refers to political independence of religious communities, which then can organize their internal affairs to their understanding of the sacred as they see it. And the opposite again is religious cooptation, where we see that there are strong vulnerabilities going along with it of religious communities to political manipulation. Again, the empirical findings are supporting these propositions. And now click, and here comes the last slide for today from my side. I'm trying to make now the summary of my ideas. Political conflict is something which is happening every day, everywhere. Only very rarely political conflict really escalate into armed conflict. And for this escalation to occur, political elites are needed to mobilize people and to justify the use of force. And now click, 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 click. Yes. In this regard, it is important to interrupt these mobilization processes. And I was trying to make an argument that religious autonomy, and now click, and click, and click, and religious literacy, religious awareness, and religious public can operate in a way to, well, do this interruption, and this then might help to give space to peaceful solution of a conflict that otherwise would have escalated into violence. And these are my ideas so far.
Thank you very much, and now you have very good teamwork. Okay, now let's hear what's the suggestion I has.
Okay, I'm now have anxiety to share my slides, but thank you so much. Okay, I think this is such a short time to discuss such an important topic, and thank you so much, Christy and Andreas, for your input. And I'm thinking that what kind of alternatives that we are having. Would you please click for 5 times? Yeah, okay, thank you. What do you recognize from this picture? In English, it is called military chaplain, right? In Korea, South Korea, the military chaplain was started during the Korean War in 1950. And the suggestion was made by the Northwest Youth Association group, the group of people who supported the Youth Association, the Christian group. And also the US government supported to have this system. And the picture on the left side is Korean military, and on the right side is US military. And I have been thinking the role of religion. I remember the scene in 1991 when the US government declared the Gulf War. There was a news article said that Billy Graham, he was at the White House. He spent the night together, pray for the answer of the God, whether they need to go for the war or should not go into the war. And the article that I read, Billy Graham prayed for the US to win this war. And then later on, in 2001, the Iraqi war, that time, Bush, the President Bush, George W. Bush, he also prayed hard whether he should go for this war or not. So I think history of the religion, especially I'm now mentioning about the Christianity mostly, but I think it is heavily connected with militarism, and it is the source of the violence. So religious literacy and illiteracy, it's religion. So I'm not so sure that I can say that religion is connected to the violence, but I can say that some part of Christianity is heavily connected to the violent culture that we are having at the moment. So this picture is a little bit grotesque to me. We have religious priest or pastor praying for the soldiers going into the war. Then what we pray for? And next slide, please. I mentioned here about the April 3rd massacre, and now we are discussing about Anthropocene. And I think the history of Anthropocene is a massacre for another species. I like the term of biophilia, which was suggested by Eric Fromm. And he said that biophilia and necrophilia. Biophilia is the tendency that you are attracted to life. And necrophilia is a tendency that you are attracted to death or dead being. What do you see from this picture? Happy cow, smiling cow, happy pig. But actually, behind the scene, we all know what is happening. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. The previous two pictures is an industrialized system that we are facing in this capitalistic society, and we are just spending our money to have nice meals. But behind of that fact, there are very uncomfortable truth. We are killing other species, and actually it's invisible, so we don't feel guilty. But the April 3rd massacre was possible because certain group of people think those civilians were the red. And they were so sure that they can kill them. They could kill them, and it's good for the country or good for the nation. And now we are killing so many other living beings on the earth, and we named it as Anthropocene. And some of the professionals or researchers in the field, they suggested different term, not Anthropocene. It's not fair because the process of, how do you say that? This Anthropocene was not really done by all the human beings on the earth. It was mostly done by the industrialized society and countries. So we should call this Eurocene. Eurocene, because European did much. Or another people suggested Manthropocene, because the patriarchy and everything is connected. So there are many other critics coming out regarding this term Anthropocene, and I think we need to face the questions. Is it really right to call this situation this structure as Anthropocene. And there is a very famous French researcher. His name is Bruno Latour. He passed away last year, and he wrote a book, Facing Gaia. I really recommend you to have a chance with Bruno Latour's idea, Facing Gaia. I think it's not really Christians-like idea, but his suggestion is really organic approaches in all the stakeholders or all the actors of this Earth system. So I think the role of religion and alternatives that we can have at the moment, I think we need to have the God to face the reality. Next slide, please. We are all responsible for the deaths of these beautiful creatures. Next slide, please. And the next slide, please. Oh, maybe this is the last one. Okay, I think, can we really face the reality that pastors, in the church, with my experience, I really hate to sing the song Soldiers of the Cross. My father is a pastor, and then we are singing together, Soldier of the Cross, and it really gave me, anxiety. With the young kids together, we are singing Soldier of the Cross, and that mentality is really, really powerful, still, everywhere. So I think the religious alternatives we need to really face that. Are we really saving lives in our on daily life, or are we a part of the perpetrators? So I don't really know what religious means, but I know what spiritual means. So I think we really need to ask each other. I really like the very analytical reasoning by Andreas in Christine's suggestion, about this whole ongoing issues on the Pacifics. So I really want to have time to reflect who we are. Aren't we the perpetrator in this Anthropocene? Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Since we started a little late, we can have 10, 15 minutes more. So I'd like to open this talk to the floor at this moment. So if you have any questions or comments, please raise your hand, then one of our student assistants will go to you with the mic.
You can come up sharp.
Can you hear me from here? This is my lecture voice. Jeff Graff, University of Toronto. The question about religious literacy and illiteracy, how do you explain in the conflict in Ukraine the support of the Russian Orthodox Patriarch, the support of the Russian Orthodox Patriarch to the military effort of Vladimir Putin that seems to contradict your hypothesis that people who are religiously literate are people of perhaps goodwill? I don't think that's the case in a situation like that.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. As a social scientist, I'm always on the safe side to say that there are always deviant cases, if you will. But this would not be my point here. So the arguments are based on statistical findings, and there are always outliers, that's for sure. At the same time, the Russian orthodoxy is nicely fitting into my category of religious autonomy versus religious cooptation, where you clearly find that the Orthodox churches are very closely aligned with political authorities, both in Russia but also in Serbia and other places, which makes them, at my understanding, especially vulnerable for this kind of cooptation. At the same time, I have the feeling, at least my friends are telling me this, that Orthodox theology is still suffering from a lack of social theology, if you will. So it's a very isolated understanding of salvation, which is mostly individualized. And this individualized understanding of salvation then also quite easily travels into the military. as outlined now, because you have military chaplains there at all stages of the military, who are trying to provide a reassurance to the soldiers that they will be safe if they only are bold enough to serve their duties. And therefore I think it's not really an example which is contradicting my argument, but it's also showing the complexity of the argument. So there are 3-4 factors which are found to impact on this relationship between religious communities on the one hand and the escalation of armed conflict on the other hand. And sometimes even very religiously educated people might end up on the false side of history, if you will, if they're too strongly co-opted with political authorities, in my understanding. Does this help? So I'm somewhat evading your argument, but you're right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over there.
Thank you for your...
It's working.
Thank you for your presentation. One is, you take Asia.
I'm sorry, but can you talk close to the mic so everyone can hear?
Hello.
Thank you.
You take Asia, for example, Indian subcontinent and even Korean peninsula. Almost now there is a posture of war. And also, you take across the world, now there is a kind of a reordering, new world order. So in this context, you are talking about peace, even to Dr. Christine also, we are talking about as a Christian social ethicist. We are talking about peace and justice and so forth, even the preconditions for war, just war, seem to have failed, totally seem to have failed. Any country can go to war and then new negotiation. There's no negotiation at all. There are no preconditions. United Nations is also highly neutralized and it has not been so effective. So in such a conditions, how does peace make any sense in a world of... we talk about shalom, we lift up some of the biblical passages, we talk about those things, and we talk about moral accountability. So, no, you take Ukraine, the whole Russian, this one, and you look at Europe and North America, and even India and other countries. Clearly, they don't really completely position themselves as neutral or they support Ukraine or Russia or whatever. So this is
okay. I'm sorry to cut you, Raju, but are you addressing the question to?
Yeah, my thing is how do you look at peace and?
How do you look at peace? Is peace possible? Is that your question? I'm sorry, Dr. Raju, are you asking to address? To everyone? Okay.
Well, you know that that's a really big question, and then all Christian theologians struggle with the question of whether peace is possible. Why not? Is there any reason that peace is impossible? And I'm going to just respond to your question. Just I'm going to raise two things. The question should be more like, it's not about whether peace is possible. The question should be what we can do for peace from where we stand. And then from where we stand, it can be political position, it can be social location, it can be anything. But then the question should be what kind of peace we imagine and whether this peace is a collective imagination and what we can do for peace from where we stand.
Thank you.
Thank you also from my side for your question. In political science, we make the distinction between positive and negative peace, as you're well aware. And negative peace mostly refers to the absence of physical violence. And I think, if I understood my co-panelists right, for many animals, negative peace would be already a quite big achievement. But normally we are focusing on social or interhuman relations. And there we find that negative peace normally is not enough. Because it is, stabilizing and freezing and unjust relationships. And therefore, we think that negative peace must be transformed into positive peace, which means that some principle of justice is organizing human relationship and that there is an absence of structural violence. This is considered to be mostly regulative ideas. So this is something which we don't have, but what we are striving for. And therefore, it is, the task of the communities to deliberate what they consider to be positive peace and try then to figure out how to arrive to this place, which always includes that, violence must be absent and that violence is not even thought about as a mean to for conflict settlement, if you will. So this is my understanding of peace.
Thank you for the question. I always think in that way, is peace possible? What am I doing with peace organization and peace education? But I think peace is possible, but it looks impossible because human race didn't put much effort to make peace. We put much effort and resources to continue the war and violence. I think we need to invest much more resources into peace studies and policy making based on the how to structuralize peace into our system. Andreas just mentioned about positive peace and negative peace, and you are aware of Johan Galton's point of view. And he also analyzed violence into 3 layers: cultural violence, structural violence, and direct violence. I think the cultural violence support the system and it create the system. And the structural violence, it justify the direct violence on other beings. So for me, the role of religion is changing the culture that we are living together. Culture is really powerful, permeating our daily life. If you are looking up to the pastor and listening to the pastor, then you will obey the learns from the church. Somebody is like this. Yeah, I don't like it, but the tradition was like that. So I was thinking that the complex issues should be discussed in complex way. And I think peace is very complex thing. So we need to have more discourse and discussion about how can we build peace together. And I think detained democracy everywhere is a problem. How can we make democracy as commons? And how can we understand peace as commons, as everyone's? So I think we do work a little bit more, a little bit harder, and I think we will have a little bit more peaceful society sometime. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have just time for one last comment or question. Okay, we can do 2. Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't okay.
I got a question for Christine, Simon Linda, University of Tübingen. I would be totally fine with what you said 1.5 years ago, and then Russia invited Ukraine. We also talked about that last minute. Now, in my eyes, the best protection for Ukraine would have been if they would have come into the NATO before Russia invited. So, wouldn't it be a possibility to think like protecting peace, always have in mind that a war could happen? So, isn't it the reality that war could happen? And we have to keep that in mind to keep peace. So this is my question for Christine.
Sorry. Can you say one question, summarize your question?
Yeah, you were talking about demilitarization.
Demilitarization.
And I was thinking that maybe there has to be an amount of militarization to keep peace. So is this something that works with your thoughts?
When Andreas already talked about negative and positive peace, and peace, I have two different answers, honestly. So when war in Ukraine happened, I kept thinking about how Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh would respond to the war. Because when Vietnam War happened, Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh's first message was, just stop war immediately, no matter what. Without any negotiation, without any peace, so just stop the war immediately so that creates space for people to talk about long-term peace. Now it can be translated as a peacekeeping effort. So peacekeeping is just to stop war immediately, to stop any kind of mass scale of violence, so that people can start talking about peacemaking. And the peacemaking is a kind of like an access strategy to talk about how to create long-term peace, and then the positive peace can be connected to peace building. So peace building is, for me, peace building can be possible only through demilitarization of the world. And I hear you, if I just hear you correctly, whenever I just read the news about Ukraine, I feel quite conflicted because this war is highly masculinized. And then both parties, NATO and the United States and Russia, all talk about how to escalate violence to end war and to keep peace. But then all other, like the small voices of religious peace activists, particularly Christian pacifists, their voices of ending war immediately, and then let's talk about demilitarizing the area, has been completely ignored. And then there are pacifists in Russia, and also there are pacifists in Ukraine and Europe, who all talk about ending war in Ukraine immediately, but those voices have been always ignored. But that doesn't mean that we are dying. We're still here. So hopefully, do you want to add?
I think we have to close here at this moment, but I hope you continue to work with what we have discussed here. What they provided was very rich and thick, so I really agree that the time is very limited, and I think each one has to have a full plenary session. But I think it's very timely to think about this topic today as we go out to Korean Peninsula. You will see small pieces of this land, but you will find this land is occupied by all what we have discussed, the militarism, how the U.S. military affects this land, and also the reality of the division affects this land. You'll find some pieces there. So I think that this conversation gives us a great interpretive tool through which we look at not only the Anthropocene, but also Korea. So please give a pass to these three candidates. Heidi Mark, come and give some announcements.
Thank you so much. I'm actually